Rime of the Frostmaiden, Chapter 4 Destruction's Light. This chapter of this campaign is made for 5th or 6th level characters. Exactly when this chapter begins when the chardalyn dragon is released from Sunblight. It could either be released when the player characters just happen to arrive at Sunblight, or the DM could set a timeline of events that take place where, say, the dragon simply comes out of the mountains from the south and begins attacking the 10 towns. When it attacks quickly, and it destroys many, many things. As you can see by this image, well, here's the map of Icewind Dale of the dragon's flight path from Sunblight to Dugan's Hole to Goodmead, East Haven, so on, all the way to Bryn Chandler, and then potentially back to Sunblight. But here's the chardalyn dragon attacking one of the 10 towns, killing innocent people that are desperate to survive, destroying many of its buildings. This chapter is unusual in its presentation. It is not a bunch of little singular adventures as the first 2 chapters of Rime of the Frostmaiden is like. It is also not a big dungeon crawl like the 3rd chapter, Sunblight. It is an event-based chapter and adventure. And the actual events that take place are really going to be determined by what the player characters want to do, which is very event-based, obviously. Running the chapter, going back to the 10 towns, you'll note that, again, when this begins, the player characters will have the choice when they first get the Sunblight or when the DM wants to unleash that this happens. The player characters might make the choice to explore Sunblight first, like my particular group did, or they might decide to turn back, head back to Icewind Dale, and try to stop the chardalyn dragon if they can, before it causes too much damage. Now, the adventure presents an opportunity to get back faster if they choose to go back in the form of Valen Harpel, a member of the Harpel family and a member of the Arcane Brotherhood. She arrives with her dog sled team, although they're steered by some Icewind kobolds, and she has some Icewind kobold zombies there as well. She is a nefarious character whose intention is to get into Yithrin, the fallen Netheril city in the Reged Glacier, though she has the need to get rid of the chardalyn dragon first to complete her goals, because she wants Icewind Dale more or less intact and controlled by the Brotherhood. But she also needs to recover an item called the Codicil of White from Auril the Frostmaiden's lair to do so. Now, she has her own stats, of course, as you can see here. She is a powerful spellcaster. Once she picks up the players, assuming they're willing to go with her, she will likely get them there faster. And of course, they don't have to go with her. They don't really know her. It may be more than just coincidence that she just happens to show up. It's likely she's been following the player characters, or maybe has been keeping tabs on them, learning about who they are as they've been completing more and more quests. She needs competent mercenaries to aid her again to get into Yithrin, which is going to be dangerous. Now, a big part of this particular chapter is the dragon's flight path and how long it takes to get to each location. Going from Sunblight to Dugan Hole takes the dragon 2 hours. Dugan Hole to Goodmead, 30 minutes. And then 1.5 hours to fly from Goodmead to East Haven, etc., etc. There's also the time that the dragon takes in each town to do as much destruction as possible. And so the DM should be very cautious about this timeline here and how much time passes between each flight and how much time the dragon takes in town. Because the player characters will also have to figure out how long, well, it'll take them to get back. And it will also matter as to where the player characters choose to go when they're heading back. If they're close to Sunblight, they say they're in this canyon here, and they choose to go back down this path over here and past this little woodland, they'll make it on the way back towards Dugan Hole probably first, and we'll see it burning in the distance. Player characters won't know where the dragon is most likely when they're on the way back, unless they have some ability, some divination ability that would allow them to look into that. But they can make some determination based on seeing Dugan's Hole burning and likely Goodmead burning by then, maybe even East Haven to the east, and figure out that the dragon is making a counterclockwise attack on the entire 10 towns and destroying it. Now, the next part of this particular chapter is really just what happens in each town when the dragon arrives. In Dugan's Hole, the dragon destroys every structure in town, including the docks, and it takes 30 minutes for it to do this. The 20 stones of Thrune are untouched. Zardarok intends to study them. He doesn't want them destroyed. They've also been there for a long time. Half the population of the town is killed, including its speaker. The town is severely damaged. And if I recall correctly, Dugan's Hold is also the town that the player characters, either Dugan Hold or Goodmead, is one of the towns that the player characters actually can become the speaker for that town. Now, after 30 minutes, it then flies to Goodmead and begins destroying the town as well. It spares the Mead Hall, maybe because it's just lucky or it has plot armor. I don't know. The town is destroyed in 1 hour. 25 people are killed, although the majority of the people flee to the woods and get out of town, and the dragon doesn't take any damage. This is interesting because the dragon could take damage. Archers in the town, for example, or spellcasters in the town might fire some spells or might fire some arrows at the dragon while it's flying. Maybe there's other minor adventurers who come out of their homes and try to stop it. Target 3 as it hits East Haven. Uh, it's one of the larger towns, of course. It catches the town by surprise, but the militia reacts and succeeds in damaging the dragon. As you note, its hit points increases by 10 as it comes here. It kills 250 people, a third of the population, including most of the militia and a number of individuals that are individual people here. There are also some invisible duergar who are also waiting in town for the attack, and they are causing chaos and killing things. One of the things that might happen is while the player characters are going from town to town or location to location, they might encounter invisible duergar or an enlarged duergar who just attacks them, trying to stop them, and likely might even know who they are. There may be townsfolk who are going crazy because of the influence of chardalyn or other situations happening, such as looters stealing from houses because the guards have been destroyed or they're dealing with the dragon and they're just taking advantage of it. Now, target 4 is when the dragon gets to Caer This is where they have the large castle, but a small castle really. It lands between the town and the castle and then moves through town, leveling every structure one after another, with the exception of the castle itself, which would be just too difficult. The uphill climb and Denev's Rest are also destroyed. This takes about an hour, and essentially it's just most of the town is completely destroyed, leaving only Caer the castle for the most part. The dragon takes no damage when it's actually here, but there are a lot of people that are killed. It then goes to the next town, which is Caer It destroys every structure in town in an hour and a half. Speaker Crovis, the town's dragonborn defender, passed out drunk in the snow throughout the entire ordeal and wakes up to find his settlement wiped out, which might confuse him, of course. 50 people die, but many of the people do survive, although there's some more invisible duergar in the town when this happens. Um, because Trovis was unconscious, he could have helped against the fight, but as a result, the dragon takes no damage because he's a drunk, apparently. As it gets to Tourmaline, one of the smaller towns, or medium-sized towns, as I say, the dragon takes a full 6 hours to destroy the town. It destroys virtually everything or damages everything. The East Side Tavern is only partially damaged and does remain open afterwards, but the Blue Clam is destroyed, and most of its docks and boats are destroyed. The militia is destroyed. There's 20 of the town's militia perish in their homes. Another 30 residents are killed when in a mine collapse triggered by duergar saboteurs. Half the remaining, 500 people flee to Targos and then to Bryn Chandler, fleeing for their lives. Now, the dragon is slightly injured, possibly hit by an arrow during this attack. This attack, again, takes 6 hours to take place. This will actually grant the player characters more time to come back, or if they are in Sunblight, fighting different things in there, they're more likely. Well, this tactic, because it takes so long to destroy Tourmaline and get every building, it gives the players a little more time to deal, maybe save some of the other towns. Finally, the dragon gets to Lonelywood a little bit later. Local fishers witness the dragon's attack on Tourmaline and rush home. People are warned. There are no people killed because the people flee into the woods. The dragon takes no damage, but the dragon takes 2 hours to lay waste to the empty town, destroying every building and every single dock. Lonelywood is completely leveled and burned to the ground as a result. Town 8, Bremen. Dragon flies over Mare Doldun, spots many of Bremen's residents crossing the lake by boat, and sinks them. It then reaches the town where it takes 2 hours to lay waste to the town and flatten every building. Two-thirds of the population are killed, either in the boats or the town proper, including the speaker, a number of other individuals. People put up a good fight, but the dragon only takes minimum damage, but still some damage. Second to lastly, or penultimately, we reach Targos. Their spies in town alert him of the dragon shortly after the attack began. Targos has a little bit of time to prepare, and the furious residents, eager to defend their town, use siege weapons that are brought to bear against the dragon. However, many of the town's prepared defenses are undermined by duergar saboteurs. Again, the duergar are out in force on behalf of Zardarok, trying to stop things like this from happening. The dragon, as a result, takes 8 hours to reduce Targos to a smoldering ruin, but it does destroy it. This way, I believe they did this because in case the player characters decide to take a long rest while exploring and fighting in Sunblight, this gives them enough time to take a long rest along with what happens in Tourmaline, and then maybe come back and maybe save one or two of the towns still. But this is one of those points where it takes quite a while for Targos to be destroyed, just because the people there are fighting back. And the dragon is somewhat damaged, but not by much. Lastly, we get to Bryn Chandler. When my group fought the dragon, they got back just in time before the dragon hit Bryn Chandler while the rest of the dale was burning. Bryn Chandler is bursting at its seams with refugees coming from the other towns that have been destroyed or fleeing. The dragon spends 6 hours strafing the town and just destroys as much as it can, and then spends another 6 hours going from one smoldering ruin into the next, hunting down survivors. After 12 hours of attacks on Bryn Chandler, the dragon returns to Zardark's fortress for repairs. It can't be repaired if Zardark is destroyed. Now, note the North Look is damaged but not destroyed. Both Black Iron Blades and the House of the Morning Launch are lost, along with every other establishment, almost every other establishment, including the inns that are not listed in this adventure but do actually exist. If you look them up in Volo's Guide to the North. Now, a duergar do prowl the town when this isn't happening, so the player characters might arrive in town and very likely have to deal with duergar when they arrive, especially if they beat the dragon to the town. There are a lot of casualties as the dragon is relentless, and there's duergar that are just murdering people during the same time. A lot of different people perish if the player characters aren't able to stop the dragon by this point, or if they spend too long trying to do some little side quest and they don't take it seriously. What's interesting about this entire chapter is the most of the plot armor of the 10 towns is shattered. There are a couple of particular buildings like the Goodmead Hall that luckily survive, but a lot of important locations and the towns themselves are either completely destroyed or heavily damaged. Granted, they could be repaired at some point to some degree, but the damage will be felt for many years. And some of the towns, say, like Lonelywood and maybe Targos, are just ruins after this. Now, then there is of course, the showdown with the dragon, assuming the player characters come back and do attempt to stop it. This would be the image of them trying to fight it. It is not the most powerful dragon. It's really not made for high level characters. It's meant for 5th or 6th level characters to stop it or try to fight it. And its breath weapon is more like a beam that targets smaller amounts of enemies rather than a large fiery burst or anything like that. And it's something the player characters should be able to defeat at their level as long as they're 5th or 6th level. Wherever this battle ends up happening, it could happen out in the snow, it could happen over one of the towns, it could happen above the roofs of Bryn Chandler. there's many places where this could take place. Now, the dragon again does take actual damage. If the characters deal 30 damage or more to the dragon and it's destroyed, it will fly then to the next town. It's not going to stick around and just keep taking hits. It's going to go off, leave whatever town it was at the way it is, go to the next town, continue with what it's doing, and later, if it's repaired by the duergar, it will come back and finish the job. Now, of course, there's if the player characters destroy the dragon, what the weather conditions are like, if there are any NPCs that are helping out, perhaps like helpful NPCs as the adventure suggests. Maybe the player character have some friends that can help. Valen Harpel will likely be with the player characters, and she is a powerful mage and will very likely join in the fight, although she won't put herself in grave danger if she can help it. Noted, by the way, that there are a possibility of random duergar showing up. There is, this town in chaos table, including if a building collapses nearby. There's trap beasts, thieves, walking wounded, malevolent, angry townsfolk that are possessed by chardalyn, and the chapter gives you some good information concerning each little segment here and how this should be played out, and gives you a couple of nice pieces of art as well. Now, at the end of the adventure or the chapter, when the player characters have defeated the dragon and saved as many towns as they can, Valen Harpel will reveal more or less why she's really there. Now, one of her main concerns is dealing with the dragon and getting it out of the way since it's made its attack. If she feels the characters are ready and can handle some of the higher level stuff that are coming after this, such as going into Aril's abode, then she'll give them information about why she's there. That she wants to get to the ruined city of Yithrin, a fragment of the fallen empire of Netheril, and search those ruins. She also knows roughly where it's at. I say roughly, as she knows how to get there, but she will need the Codicil of White, an item in the possession of Aril or at the fortress where she is based, to get there. This also leads into chapter 5, which deals with Aril herself and facing off against Aril as a result, and later the last two chapters of the campaign dealing with Yithrin itself. Now, there are all sorts of other reason why information that she has and other information that she knows about the fallen city and Netheril. She may not give the player characters all this information. She would be familiar with the city's mythalar and what that is, and some of the other different devices there, which is one of the reasons that she and the Arcane Brotherhood really want to go there. They want to be able to control Yithrin. And there's also some information on what the Cardicil is, her what her Professor Orb is. It's her magical device she calls Professor Scant. That was part of her collection. It was stolen, and this one of the things she wants back. That was stolen from someone else in the campaign, which is part of her personal quest. Now, overall, this is one of the best chapters in the entire campaign. It just throws plot armor out the window, especially for an area like Icewind Dale, which is so famous from so many different books and adventures. It's generally I would call it a 5 out of 5 star adventure. It's just a lot of things can happen. It's really up in the air. It really depends on what the player characters do, and it's one of those adventures where there is some severe danger going on, and a lot of different events can take place depending on where the player characters go, and they may not even be able to easily stop the dragon or catch it in its tracks unless they're smart about it. The dragon again might go back to sunlight and the attack could happen again. This is really smart writing with this particular chapter. The campaign generally starts off kind of quietly with some, many little tiny adventures in the first two chapters, goes for its first real dungeon crawl with the third, but at this point, it takes a hard left turn and gives you a lot of destruction and a lot of, just as I noted earlier, destroying the plot armor of Icewind Dale and the real danger of how dangerous this is and the chardalyn dragon is comes out. And player characters will probably realize real quick that if they don't do anything, terrible things will happen and then it will keep happening. And there won't be an Icewind Dale anymore. Although I'll note there you may get player characters who might think this is amusing or they just want to see what the dragon does. Well, what it does is it destroys the campaign or at least the towns. and there may not be a town to go back to, just utter ruin if they do not stop the dragon. That is. Now, guys, if you like these reviews and you want to see more of them, please like this video and subscribe if you can for more content, as well as the follow ups to this adventure, well, this chapter, and the one after that, and the one after that.